The November 24th, 2020 meeting of the Long Branch City Council will now come to order. Roll call.
Mr. Dangler?
Here.
Dr. Vogt?
Here.
Mrs. Wittes?
Here.
Dr. Selly?
Here.
And Mr. Vieira?
Here. We will now recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the Republic, for which it stands one nation, under God, indivisible, in liberty and justice for all.
I hereby certify that this meeting has been published in the newspaper and adequate electronic notice has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act and New Jersey Administrative Code Title 5, Chapter 39, Section 1.5, Notice of the Remote Public Meetings as required by law.
Thank you. Reading the approval of previous minutes. I need a motion to approve the minutes of November 12th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Dangler?
Yes.
Dr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mrs. Wittes?
Yes.
Dr. Selly?
Yes.
And Mr. Vieira?
Yes. Consideration of ordinance. Public hearing and final consideration. This is the second reading of ordinance 24-20 entitled the Bond Ordinance providing for various 2020 capital acquisitions and improvements for the city of Long Branch in the county of Monmouth, state of New Jersey, appropriating $3,918,000, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $3,722,000 bonds or notes for the city of finance, part of the cost of thereof. This is an ordinance was introduced on November 12th, 2020. I need a motion to open a public hearing for ordinance 2420.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
If any member of the public has any comments to make, please dial *9 on your phone and a representative will call you by your last three digits of your phone number. When you are called upon, state your name and address clearly for the record. You will have 5 minutes and may only speak once.
Caller whose phone number ends in 350, go ahead.
Tiger.
Yeah, Ernest McNolly, 400 Deal Lake Drive, Asbury Park, New Jersey, born in Long Branch on 2nd Avenue. Can we get back to the synopsis, the overview? Because I don't know if it's me, but I don't understand a word that the council president says or how he reads it or anything. Just doesn't make
Mr.
sense.
McNolly, this is a capital bond ordinance. The bond ordinance, it's providing for various capital improvements. It's a purchase of trucks, improvements to parks, purchase of turnout gear for the fire department, purchase of vehicles for the police department, and repairs to the roof at City Hall, upgrades to the men's and women's locker rooms in the police department, and the citywide road program. And the total amount of it, the total amount of the appropriation is $3,918,000, and the amount of bonds is $3,722,000. The difference between those two numbers is the down payment in cash.
So the city taxpayers are putting up the $3 million, and the city of taxpayers are on the hook for $3 million in bonds.
No, the city, what's coming out of the, I guess it's 5%. So it's a $3.9 million bond issue. 5% of it is cash, 95% of it is bonds. Obviously, all of it is paid for out of the city's budget.
For the grand total of all the improvements from A to Z is $6 million or $3 million?
$3 million, $3,918,000, sir. I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's okay. And of which 5% is going to be cash paid by the city,
right?
And the rest is going to be bonded out, which both things come from homeowner taxes, not from.
Exactly.
Not from. Okay.
You're exactly correct.
not from other sources, not from parking revenue, not from beach revenue. It comes from the taxpayers' property tax revenue.
No, it comes from all city revenue. Some of it could come from park revenue. Some of it could come from beach revenue. It comes from the city's general fund.
Well, who would determine the breakdown? I mean, obviously the homeowners, taxpayers. If you're giving part of this from parking and part from beach revenue, it's less of a burden to the homeowner. But I don't think anybody. I'm not too bad at listening, and I don't really understand how your CFO kind of puts this all together. But anyway, it just seems like no one will ever know, and it's just going to go to vote tonight, and like everything else, it's going to get approved. But my point is, the things that you mentioned in there, police cars and bathrooms and roofs and fire things and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the city council needs to be aware that there's a lot of problems going on in the police department and the fire department. And, just keep throwing money at these people. I mean, I'm still working on it, but I understand a search warrant was issued to search the house of a paid fireman for stealing equipment. And the taxpayers pay for that equipment. So what's going on? Why is it all of these things, when we hear these numbers, we can't get the problems in the police and fire department to indicate that you're throwing good money after bad. Unless you get the right management, chief of police, chief of fire, and OEM in there, it's going to continue. So as far as I know, a paid fireman was a search warrant home for stealing fire equipment, city property. Now, again, I can't get any information. The city business administrator won't talk to anybody about anything. He's closed lip on anything. He brought that style from Eatontown, which is, you don't say anything, you don't make any mention to the press, you close down the Link News, you close down Dan Riddell and the Asbury Park Press, and you make like it never happened, except it did happen. There was a search warrant issued on a fireman paid in Long Branch for stealing equipment. Now, can I say that 100%? No, 97%. But for the other 3%, yeah, so in my opinion, all of this should be subject to the public being aware when you spend all this money, and to the point where you can't keep doing this, where nobody calls in. Where's 30,000 people in Long Branch? You've disenfranchised them so much, nobody wants to call in anymore. You're lucky you have me. You're lucky.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. McNolly.
And, okay.
Caller whose phone number ends in 198. Go ahead.
Mr. IT Man, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir.
Madam Clerk, I'm requesting 1 minute notification if needed. On tonight's ordinance 2420, it's most unfortunate that the city, using COVID as a cover, did not have a budget workshop with presentations by department heads so that the residents could assess what demonstrated needs exist for the items on this ordinance this evening. So much for transparency. It's quite lacking in the Pallone administration. Also, Mr. Martin, your response to my Oprah, dated November 13th, did not provide a clarified breakout of Section 20 costs, but rather a fleeting answer that only mentioned engineering and bond issuance anticipated expenses. You provided two figures, $188,000 for engineering and $27,000 for costs and financing of bonding legal. Again, this lack of transparency is very troubling. Total appropriations on this ordinance this evening amount to $3,918,000. And yet, Mr. Martin, you're reserving only $215,000 as per Section 7, Item D, for allowable items of expense under Section 20 costs. That $215,000 figure only represents 5.48% of the total appropriation. Setting aside the vehicle purchases, City Hall roof repair, police locker room upgrades, and new turnout gear for the fire department, all just mentioned totaling $2,024,000, there is separately $1,894,000 budgeted for road improvements. Again, Mr. Martin, you responded to my Oprah request seeking an itemized list by simply referencing engineering and bond issuing costs of $215,000. But, Mr. Martin, you did not reference any Section 20 item of expense required to pay interest on the initial bond anticipation notes you're requesting to be issued.
We
And
didn't realize any interest
as
on this.
such, until further transparency is available concerning the breakout of Ordinance 24, I am demanding a no vote on Ordinance 24 this evening. That's it, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Lepore.
Caller whose phone number ends in 384, go ahead. Caller, you may have to unmute yourself. *6 on your phone.
I am not speaking with regard to this ordinance. I do want to be heard at the public session of the meeting at the conclusion as to any other matters which may be coming before the council.
Very good, sir.
Thank you.
No other hands raised.
I need a motion to close.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This is the third reading of ordinance 24-20 entitled a bond ordinance providing for various 2020 capital acquisitions and improvements for the city of Long Branch in the county of Monmouth, state of New Jersey, appropriating $3,918,000, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $3,722,000 bonds or notes of the city finance part of the costs thereof. I need a motion to adopt the third and the final reading and advertise according to law.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Dangler?
Yes.
Dr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mrs. Wittes?
Yes.
Dr. Selly?
She's on mute.
Dr. Selly, can you unmute? Dr. Selly, can you unmute?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, thank you. And Mr. Vieira?
Yes. This is the second reading of ordinance number 25 entitled an ordinance amending portion of chapter 308 tabs of the code of the city of Long Branch. This ordinance was introduced on November 12, 2020. I need a motion to open the public hearing for ordinance number 25.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If any member of the public has any comments to make, please dial *9 on your phone, and the representative will call you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When you are called upon, state your name and address clearly for the record. You will have 5 minutes and may only speak once.
Caller whose phone number ends in 350, go ahead.
Yeah, Ernest McNally, born in Long Branch, live in Asbury Park, born at Deal Lake Drive, Asbury Park, New Jersey. I'm sorry, Mr. Renaud, I'm going to ask you again for a synopsis, a quick overview.
Yes, sir. This is changing the rates and fees in the taxi ordinance. I'm not sure it means much for me to go through it, but it's essentially increasing the travel in zone 1 from $4.25 to $5 and then it goes on, it's increasing from $4.75 to $6 of traveling from zone 1 to zone 2. Et cetera, et cetera. But that's what it is, Mr. McNally. It's an increase in the taxi rates for the.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. So, in other words, people, thank you. So people who are dependent on taxi around Long Branch, it sounds like they're going to be receiving a 10 or 20% increase, again, during this pandemic, but that's what it sounds like. Is it a fact that the city regulates what the medallion, or I don't know what you call them, licensed cab drivers in Long Branch, they pay for their license, but their rate is determined by the city and council, the mayor and council, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, all right, so they applied for an increase. Did you have a percentage on this? Regardless
I did not
of the
do a
zone,
percentage. I'm sorry, it was done, I think it was done in the police department, but I didn't calculate percentages, no, sir.
Oh, it's done in the police department, okay. So I guess that would mean the police chief did it, because he seems to be pretty involved with the taxi drivers licensing, et cetera, background checks, and maybe in terms of rates. But in fact, it's a percentage increase, and I think that anyone would say this is not the right time for it, but you'll do your thing. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more
No other
comments?
no other hands raised.
This is the third reading of ordinance 2520, title and ordinance amending various fees contained under the chapter 5 entitled Administrations or Government, section 5-17.
Council President Vieira, my apologies. That is a clerical error.
Okay.
It is ordinance 2520 entitled an ordinance amending portion of chapter 308 taxi cabs of the code of the city of Long Branch.
Okay. So do you want me to,
So it is the third reading of.
2520, I said that.
Yep. Mhm.
Okay. All right, I'll read again. This is the third reading of the ordinance 2520 entitled an ordinance amending various fees contained in the chapter 5 entitled Administration of Government, section 5-17, Public Records, and chapter 181 entitled Food Establishments, Retail, sections 181-4, License Fee of the Code of the City of Long Branch.
Council President,
Yes.
that's the next ordinance, that there's a typo in your read by ordinance. The title of the ordinance that we're about to vote on, and you don't have to repeat it again. We've read it already for the record, is an ordinance amending a portion of chapter 308 taxi cabs of the code of the city of Long Branch. And what we need now is a motion to adopt it on third reading and final passage.
All right, I need a motion to adopt the third and the final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Dangler,
Yes.
Dr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mrs. Wittes,
Yes.
Dr. Selly, Dr. Selly, Dr. Selly, your vote,
Yes.
and Mr. Vieira.
Yes. Ordinance for introduction. Before I introduce this ordinance, I'd like to give our city attorney a few words.
Thank you, Council President. This ordinance is the same ordinance that was on for our final adoption at your last meeting. It's an amendment to the redevelopment plan, the Oceanfront Broadway redevelopment plan. This ordinance was introduced by council twice. It went and was reviewed by the planning board twice, and it's being presented to you in the same form that it was when it received a tie vote last week. And of course, the tie vote results in a defeat at that time. There were a number of things that were said at the time of the public hearing and at the time of the introduction of this ordinance that were not accurate and or were misleading. And I wanted to, after the meeting, I spoke to many of the council people, and once I kind of laid out what the appropriate facts were with regards to this ordinance, it was the council's determination and the council president's determination to put it back on for introduction. Despite the comments that were made, this is not an ordinance of unlimited density. It has bulk and building volumes and square footage calculations in it that would limit the number of units. The actual number of units proposed is 109 units. The building is essentially the same height as surrounding units. I think the deviation is somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 feet. As presented to council now more than 6 weeks ago, this development also included a density bonus because of the additional units. The density bonus is $2 million. And all of what I've been laying out to you will be the subject of a redevelopers agreement, which we will present to council for adoption, along with the designation of a redeveloper at the time of the adoption of this ordinance, so that there's not any question that what the ordinance is doing is what council is approving. And of course, council in its role as the redevelopment agency approves these developments and approves the redevelopment agreements, and subject to, of course, the final site plan review by the planning board. There was another issue that was raised kind of during the public portion that I also wanted to talk to the council about, and that's the issue of the CAFR permit. Long Branch has what's known as a permit by rule for the oceanfront area. So the CAFR permit is kind of set forth in the rules and rules and regulations of DEP. Those rules and regulations require the development to be done in accordance with your ordinance. And of course, you adopt the ordinances, and there's no requirement in it that subsequent changes to your ordinance be submitted to DEP. What is required, however, is that every development in this area has to put DEP on notice, and DEP will then review it and determine whether or not it is consistent with the permit by rule. If it's not, then the applicant, in accordance with the DEP rules, would then have to file a CAFR permit. So while there was some, claim that this was somehow wrong or illegal or contrary to what DEP said, or DEP said we couldn't do it, or somehow we would get in trouble for doing it, the fact of the matter is that this is fairly consistent with what's been happening on the ocean front. And just to make sure, the rule's been reviewed by myself and by Mr. Graviano, by our city engineer, Laura Newman, by Kevin McManaman, our redevelopment council. And I even went so far as asking our redevelopment council to contact our prior redevelopment council, who was here when it was done, and that's Robert Beckelman. And all of us have reached the same conclusion. So, while, like I said, there's a lot of kind of wild things that were said, though I do have to say that during the course of the public participation, even members of the public recognize that a project such as this, with a $2 million contribution towards a public benefit, makes perfect sense. The other thing that I want to be clear is this project doesn't contain a tax abatement. It never contained a tax abatement. That was never in the contemplation. And the increased density to this extent, from a financial point of view, is actually better for the city. And the reason it's better for the city is that, as opposed to a tax abatement, which reduces somebody's taxes, when you increase density, it increases value, and that increases the taxes that are going to be paid. So this is, I hate using the phrase win-win, but this is clearly that by increasing the density, you're not just giving something away to the developer like people claim happens in a tax abatement. What you're actually doing is you're increasing the density on a parcel, though not necessarily increasing the building size, and increasing the financial yield to the taxpayers. So it was for all of those reasons that I apologize for maybe not explained as well on the record at the time that this ordinance was to be adopted. That in my conversations with the council president, he thought it was appropriate to put this matter back on, and we'd ask council to introduce it and to move it for adoption. It does not have to go back to the planning board because this is the exact same ordinance that's been reviewed twice by the planning board. It's unchanged in any way other than the number, and meaning the ordinance number. And as I said, when we come back on December 9th, we'll have the redevelopment agreement with you so the council can do both pieces and move this project forward.
Thank you, Mr. Reno.
You're welcome, Council President.
Ordinance for introduction then. This is the first reading of ordinance 26-20 entitled an ordinance of the City of Long Branch, County of Monmouth, New Jersey, adopting amendments to the Oceanfront Broadway redevelopment plan. I need a motion to introduce the first reading, advertised to post according to law, and set public hearing for the December 9th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dangler?
Yes.
Dr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mrs. Wittes?
Yes.
Dr. Selly?
Yes.
And Mr. Viera?
Yes. Public participation for the resolutions and all general comments. I need a motion to open the public portion of the meeting for all comments.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? If any member of the public has any comments to make, please dial *9 on your phone, and a representative will call you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When you are called upon, state your name and address clearly for the record. You will have 5 minutes and may only speak once.
Caller whose phone number ends in 350, go ahead.
Yeah, Ernest McNolly, born in Long Branch, 400 Deal Lake Drive, Asbury Park, New Jersey. So first of all, I'd like to characterize Mr. Renone's constant reference to the callers, the public, and the attorney for another developer calling in who I thought were all superb, including myself, and to refer to us as wild. Really, I think the only wild fits on the mayor and council and the city attorney. That's what's wild. You double speak, you twist words, you talk after people speak, you turn around and break sunshine laws by having meetings with developers to try and figure out how you can salvage a tie vote, right? When in fact, and the references you make to CAFRA and the other, it's all questionable. I don't have in front of me now, like most people, but this is just a continuation of lack of transparency, catering to the developers and the redevelopers, duping the public, and then turning around and insulting the public and professionals for other developers like the other lawyer and saying that we're ignorant, we're making wild accusations, and that the only people who are looking out for the safety, security, and ethics of Long Branch is the mayor, council, and the city attorney, which is as far from the truth as you can get. Just look at the ocean development. There aren't that many people that happy with it. And why every time it goes per vote, it's always the same thing like it was under the Schneider administration. Yes, 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 yes. And then if there's ever a no, we go back, we put some pressure on that person, we rephrase the proposition, and then we come back and we get all yes. It doesn't work that way. You shouldn't get away with this. And I think the person who should lead this was the attorney for the other developer. He was superb. He was factual. He was not wild, and he was direct. And I tend to disagree with everything you said tonight, Mr. Renone, the way you framed this. It's all an attempt, as you usually do, to get this city developed the way this administration, which is now a carryover of the Schneider administration, to make it look exactly how you want it to look. And this thing about $2 million as a benefit, it doesn't matter. You approve things that the city doesn't want, the public doesn't know about, and then you put for example, you put a pool in a swamp and you say it's a public good. Well, what good? You created a mosquito patch, right? How is that the public good? And then you say, oh, it's only 5 feet tall. That's half a story, by the way. 10 foot per story. It's actually less. So you make it sound like, well, that's not any higher. Well, it certainly matters to the building next to it. With 1 unit below the 5 feet increase, it certainly does, because it takes their view. And then the last thing I'll say is, you keep denying when you say the public good, when you don't bring up the public deficit and no good, pollution, more people, more cars, more congestion, right? More blocking out the view of the ocean, etc. These buildings pollute themselves. All the residents pollute. And the tax on the, I don't mean literally the dollar tax, but well, it's taxing the infrastructure, the sewer. You look around these areas a little bit west, everything floods because you're hooking up too many buildings without the infrastructure upgrades, and you're listening to the developers and redevelopers, and all they care about is building projects and selling $1 million condos. That's all they care about. That's their bread and butter, nothing else. The quality of life in Long Branch, they don't even dream about it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller whose phone number ends in 198, go ahead.
Mr. IT man, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir.
Madam Clerk, I request 1 minute notification. Vincent Lepore, 33 Ocean Terrace, Long Branch. First of all, on behalf of myself, many city employees, and city residents, I would like to express my condolences and the condolences of others to Ms. Mary Moss, acting clerk and deputy clerk, for not receiving the clerk's position. Ms. Moss, you are most deserving and worthy of that position of clerk with your meritorious knowledge and skills. No one coming into that clerk's office will have the Long Branch expertise on records, elections, Oprahs, etc. that you have. Ms. Moss, we are all aware that you have been victimized by the current pay-to-play gravy train administration. And let this be a warning to all city employees wanting to advance on merit. You too can very well be the next victim. Again, our condolences, Ms. Moss. Attorney Raynon,
Yes, sir.
you're disgusting. You're completely disgusting with that colloquy on Ordinance 26. Mr. Graviano specifically stated upon my questioning at the planning board there were an undefined number of units. Between the planning board and you tonight, all of a sudden we come up with units. You're talking about consistency with Beachfront South. Everything in Beachfront South is 4 to 8 stories. So there is no consistency with the development in Beachfront South. Increased density is better for the city? No, it's not. And when it came down to the general permit by rule, it was the public, I, that educated the city during the public portion on the general permit by rule. Not you, Mr. Raynon. And your colloquy is incorrect. Unlike this city, I've been actively dealing with the DEP up until today as well. This city was to approach DEP first on the general permit by rule to see if these amendments could be taken into consideration, which DEP CAFRA will not allow. So you're burning out the taxpayers' dollars with the planning board and legal fees on something that isn't going to happen. But furthermore, what you've done now is you've caused an imbalance in the Beachfront South sector, because other developers who have developed now realize one particular developer is receiving special treatment to the design guidelines as opposed to others. That imbalance is now going to result in litigation from several in Beachfront South. And let's look a little further. We're fully aware of Kushner's Hotel project in the Beachfront South on Ocean Avenue in Morris. I wouldn't trust this city to try and open a back door for Kushner on this so he can get more height and density as well. It's truly disgusting what this city's doing. Mr. Raynone, congratulations. You've earned the title of City Attorney Aaron II. And that's the most horrific compliment anybody can be taken. Ms. Wittes, can you tell us why you voted yes at the last council meeting on this ordinance?
Mr. Lepore, you have 1 minute, sir.
Why did I vote yes? Because I knew the details of the ordinance and I was in favor of it.
Ms. Wittes, the Environmental Symposium 5 years ago in Rumson spoke about how unenvironmental high-density housing is on the coast. Long Branch was used as an example. Ms. Wittes, you're a liaison to the Long Branch Environmental Commission. Your vote yes was against environmental decency. Your vote yes, Ms. Wittes, is unenvironmental. You, Ms. Wittes, voted against the best interest of coastal environment. Perhaps, Ms. Wittes, you should re-examine your position as liaison to the Long Branch Environmental Commission. And if you decide to continue with a yes vote, perhaps you should leave the Long Branch Environmental Commission, or maybe they should wake up and throw you out.
Maybe that's your opinion, but I
Thank you for your
disagree.
comments,
with
Mr.
you.
Lepore.
It's fact, Ms. Wittes, fact.
No, it's not fact.
Council President, I just want to note, because I typically don't like to jump into the middle of this, but I believe at the planning board, Mr. Graviano talked about the public benefit here and also indicated that there was 109 units. I don't think he ever said it was an unlimited density. He's on the call now. He can confirm that.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Raynone, there was previous discussions. The 109 number was given in a presentation as well as an indication of there being a future contribution to a public benefit.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, Council President. Sorry to interrupt
Thank you.
public participation.
Caller whose phone number ends in 384. Go ahead. *6 to unmute.
Good evening, members of the council, Mr. Mayor. My name is Michael Lubin. I did appear by telephone at your previous meeting, at which time this ordinance was discussed, which was, I believe, November 12th. I'd like to just very briefly speak with regard to the ordinance that has now been introduced as ordinance 26-20. First, I'd like to read from a letter which was submitted by my office, Lowenstein Sandler, 1 Lowenstein Drive, Roseland, New Jersey, to Ms. Moss today, and I believe it was distributed to the individual mayor and council members. Then I'd like to very briefly address Mr. Raynone's comments, which to me sounded more like advocacy than comments or introduction, but we'll address that at another time. It brought forward some facts that apparently I was not aware of. There may be some disputes regarding those facts, but that will be addressed later. Proposed ordinance 2320, purporting to approve an amendment to the Oceanfront Broadway redevelopment plan, Beachfront South sector for block 216, lot 11, 12, and 24, came up for final reading and adoption at the governing body's meeting of Thursday, November 12, 2020. On behalf of our client, Black Ridge Realty LLC, which is the owner of property known as 345 Ocean in the same redevelopment area, We submitted a letter to the mayor and council objecting to the adoption of such ordinance for the reasons stated therein. As pointed out, the ordinance failed to pass by a vote of 2 in favor, 2 opposed, and 1 abstention vote. Interestingly, there was no recitation of the things that were stated at tonight's meeting then. We now have ordinance 2620, which of course is introduced at tonight's meeting. I understand, having been a municipal attorney and a land use attorney for 48 years, that this is not a public hearing on the ordinance, and that will happen on the 12th of December, at which time I wish to have an opportunity to speak. We submitted that letter objecting to the ordinance. We have adopted or incorporated that letter by reference in our letter which was submitted today. The language of ordinance 2620, as I read it, is identical to the language of failed ordinance 2320. We find this to be very surprising, to say the least. We assume that the members of the council who voted on this ordinance on November 12th did so based upon due consideration and what they thought was in the best interest of the city. That is their oath. And we assume that they acted in accordance with that oath. Nothing has changed in the 12-day period between the defeat of ordinance 2320 and the introduction of ordinance 2620. The same flaws and defects which existed in the old ordinance now exist in the proposed new ordinance. We therefore reiterate our objections to this municipal legislation as set forth in our previous letter and as I placed upon the record at the meeting of November 12th. And we understand, as I previously mentioned, it's not a public hearing tonight, but at the appropriate time, we will address this in detail. Now, with regard to Mr. Inone's comments, you know, I've been reading ordinances for a long time, having been admitted to the New Jersey Bar in 1972. And when I read the ordinance, the original ordinance 2320, and when I read the amendment to the redevelopment plan, it clearly appeared to me that there were 2 main changes. One was that the height was increased to 10 stories as opposed to 8 stories. And there was something in that ordinance where you do not count items above the roof. And clearly there was no density requirement. Now, either I misread it or I had the wrong documents in front of me, which I don't think I did. With regard to the comment that this is good for the city because of rateables, it's been the law of the state of New Jersey for as long as I've been an attorney that the fact that a project will produce rateables is not something to be considered in determining whether a project is appropriate under zoning regulations or in accordance with a comprehensive plan.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Lubin. Your time is up, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other hands raised, sir.
No one? All right. Madam Clerk, have you received any public comment by electronic or mail written letters?
No, Council President.
Thank you. I need a motion to close the public participation portion of the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolutions. Resolution 2030-20, 230-20 has been removed for further discussion. We can take a consent, a list of resolutions. Agenda, I need a room.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dangler?
Yes.
Dr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mrs. Wittes?
Yes.
Dr. Selly?
Yes.
And Mr. Vieira?
Yes. I need a motion to approve the listed applications. Approval of Justin Arthofer as a honorary on-fire police member of the Phil Day Hose Company, number 2. Number 2, approval of transfer of the medallion number 44 from Wallen Kem to Asadallah Kakar, and battalion number 63 from Mohammed Hakem and Mohammed Asalah to Asalah Kakar.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dangler,
Yes.
Dr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mrs. Wittes,
Yes.
Dr. Selly,
Yes.
and Mr. Viera.
Yes. Miscellaneous business for the good of the order. Councilman Dangler.
Thank you, Council President. I'd just like to say two quick things. One, again, with the rise of COVID, the numbers are going much faster than we would like. I just urge everyone to please be safe. Please wear your mask. If you have to go to work, if you work in an office, keep your mask on as long as possible. I know sometimes it's uncomfortable, but just keep it on all day if you can. And if it's not possible, make sure that people stay at least 6 foot away from you, because we would like to certainly have everyone as healthy as possible. And even those who disagree, we don't want anyone sick or have to go to the emergency room because of this. So just please be safe. And the second thing is, I sort of jumped the gun with the Happy Thanksgiving, but it is time. So please have a blessed and safe Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dangler. Councilwoman Vogt.
So 3 quick things. One is to check the city website. Probably give this until next Monday, because there's going to be information for people who do not have medical insurance. And this is coverage that's being offered through what's called Get Covered NJ. So for so many people right now, as we're all dealing with COVID and losing jobs and losing insurance and all the repercussions of it, if this applies to you and could be valuable information, please mark down on your calendar to check the website on Monday. Get Covered NJ is the name of it. Second thing, you'll remember that at one point I talked about the Extra Mile Day was November 1st, and for Lynn Stepik, who said afterwards that she would like to work on it. So Lynn, you sent me an email. Thank you very much for reaching out on that. I'll be back in touch with you so we can see if we can get that going a little bit more. But in the meantime, my recognition for going the extra mile, it's the people who make you smile during the day because they just show the extra caring. So my person for this meeting is actually Jimmy Ventresca. Those of you who may know him, he is the person who works at 7-Eleven. He takes care of all the coffee stand and everything that goes on there. He cleans that store incessantly and does an absolutely magnificent job, always making sure that the customers are well taken care of. Jimmy, you make my day when I go there and get my coffee. So my cheers to you for going the extra mile. And last, certainly happy, healthy, joyous, relaxing happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Vogt. Councilwoman Wittes.
Yes, I too would like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and to please stay safe. And a thank you to all those who are helping in the community to provide food to those who are food insecure at this time. We truly appreciate your efforts, and it's very helpful. So anyway, with that, have a good 2 weeks, and we'll be back again in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wittes. Councilwoman Selly.
Yes, good evening. First of all, I'd like to wish everybody a happy and safe Thanksgiving. And second of all, please wear your mask, stay home, and enjoy your family with the holiday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman Selly. Mayor Pallone. You're on mute, Mayor.
There you go, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So two things. Due to the spike in positive cases nationwide and locally, and out of our concern for our residents and employees, we've moved from by appointment only at City Hall to being closed again, unfortunately, to the public. We hope to open, as soon as the conditions improve. But having said that, our offices will remain open to serve our residents, and our employees are available during business hours. So please check out our website to find the particular numbers of the department and individuals' email addresses. And of course, you can always just call the main number at 732-222-7000. I also, as many of our council members have already mentioned, but I want to take this time to remind all of our residents to have a safe, healthy, and happy Thanksgiving. But please follow the CDC guidelines and continue to stay safe. We know that even though this holiday season may look different from years past, one day we'll all be able to get back together and normal again. And we all look forward to that time. So again, thank you. Happy holiday, happy Thanksgiving, and thank you for taking all the measures to keep you and your family safe.
Thank you, Mayor Pallone. And I also want to, besides they were my fellow council members, and Mayor said, stay safe, please. I know this is not a regular year. I'm used to having a lot of people over the house or my sister's house, but this year we're limited to that. So just keep to your immediate family. And I know it's tough. We'll get through this. And just stay safe and happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy. Good night. I need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Right.